It was a quiet evening in Springdale, Missouri. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving a pink hue over the town's empty streets. The neighborhood of Pine Creek Drive was calm, the kind of place where everyone waved at each other, and the lawns were always trimmed. But inside house number 17, something dark had been boiling for years. In 2018, Daniel Harris was a man on top of the world. He had a great job as a regional manager in a manufacturing company, a newly bought two-story home, and a beautiful wife named Cynthia. She had a 16-year-old daughter, Amelia, from a previous marriage, and though Daniel wasn't her biological father, he did his best to step into the role. At first, everything seemed normal. Cynthia was supportive and loving, and Amelia was quiet but respectful. But things began to change within the first year. Cynthia started making demands Daniel couldn't meet: new furniture, expensive vacations, loans for her brother. Daniel worked harder, doing overtime, missing dinners. Still, it was never enough. Amelia, once polite, became distant. She began telling lies about Daniel. She told her school counselor he yelled at her, that he had a drinking problem. A visit from Child Services shook Daniel to his core. He couldn't understand what was happening. Cynthia stood by her daughter, not Daniel. When he tried to defend himself, she accused him of losing control. 2 years later, Daniel lost his job. Rumors had spread through the office, anonymous emails accusing him of inappropriate behavior. No evidence, but the damage was done. Daniel always believed Cynthia was behind it. She'd begun to hate how much power he had in the relationship. Without his job, his financial control vanished. She filed for divorce in 2021. Daniel lost the house, his savings, and was given limited visitation with his own child from a previous relationship. His life fell apart. He moved to a small, rundown apartment, started driving trucks for a living, and withdrew from friends and family. He didn't fight anymore. He stayed quiet. He watched. 7 years passed. Now in 2025, Daniel had returned to Pine Creek Drive, not to visit, not to forgive, but to finish what had started years ago. Cynthia had remarried. Amelia was now 23 and engaged to a local police officer named Jason Miles. They had no idea Daniel was back. He watched them from his parked car at night. He knew their routines: the gym, the grocery store, the late-night walks. Cynthia now worked at a local insurance office. Amelia taught at a nearby elementary school. They looked happy, but Daniel was ready. He had spent 7 years preparing, tracking them, learning their habits, documenting every lie that ruined his life. He never moved on because he couldn't. The pain burned too deep. The betrayal was too sharp. On a cool Saturday night in September, it finally happened. Cynthia's body was found in her garage, strangled, then set on fire. Amelia was found 2 days later near a creek just outside town, stabbed, wrapped in a tarp. Pine Creek Drive was shaken, and so was the town. The police department assigned the case to their most experienced investigator, Detective Raymond Ray Walker, a man who had seen it all but never lost his sense of intuition. He arrived at the scene, took one look at the charred remains of Cynthia Harris, and whispered to himself, "This wasn't random. This was personal." Detective Raymond Walker stood outside the Harris garage, the air heavy with the scent of burnt rubber, smoke, and gasoline. The yellow crime scene tape flapped in the evening breeze. Neighbors gathered across the street, whispering, some crying. The flashing red and blue lights cast strange shadows on their faces. Ray Walker was 58 years old and had served in law enforcement for over 30 years. He had a calm voice, a sharp eye, and a reputation for never missing a detail. After semi-retiring a year earlier, he only came back for cases that needed a closer look. Ones where something didn't sit right. This one didn't sit right. He stepped into the garage. Cynthia's body was barely recognizable. The fire department had managed to put out the blaze quickly, but the damage was done. Her arms were bound with duct tape. Her throat showed signs of pressure, deep bruising, manual strangulation. The fire had been an afterthought, meant to destroy evidence. Not a crime of passion. This was planned. Ray reviewed the scene. No signs of forced entry into the house, no stolen items, Nothing out of place except Cynthia. That meant she likely knew her killer. He walked into the kitchen. It was spotless. On the counter was a single coffee mug, half full, lipstick stain on the rim, no second cup. She wasn't expecting company. Ray sat in his office pinning up photos. Cynthia, her stepdaughter Amelia, Amelia's fiancé, Officer Jason Miles. 2 days later, Amelia's body was found. A fisherman had reported a foul smell near Clear Creek. Officers arrived and discovered her wrapped in a blue tarp, stabbed 3 times in the chest, one wound directly to the heart. She'd been dead roughly 24 to 36 hours. Ray visited the new scene alone. Ray placed the reports side by side. 2 women connected by blood and history, both dead within 2 days, 2 different methods. One strangled and burned, one stabbed and dumped. But this wasn't a random killer. It was revenge. Cold, calculated revenge. Ray requested background checks. Cynthia Harris, divorced in 2021 from one Daniel Harris. No criminal history, no restraining orders. Amelia Dunn had lived with her mother during the divorce. No police reports filed against Daniel, but a note in Child Services records flagged a past investigation. Alleged emotional abuse by stepfather, case dismissed due to lack of evidence. Ray looked at the file photo of Daniel Harris, late 40s, brown hair, now turning gray, former manager, last known address listed as a trucking apartment on the outskirts of Joplin. Ray muttered to himself, "Where are you, Daniel?" He visited Daniel's last known place, empty, cleaned out, no mail, no forwarding address. Neighbors hadn't seen him in months, but there was something odd. Across the street, in the weeds near the lot's fence, Ray noticed tire tracks. Deep, recent, not from any car, a heavy-duty pickup, maybe with a trailer. He knelt, running his fingers along the grooves. "He was here," he said quietly. Ray went back to his board. A red thread now connected Cynthia and Amelia to a single question. What happened 7 years ago that made this man disappear and come back to kill? The town of Springdale was still mourning. The media was calling it the Harris family murders. But Ray Walker didn't care about headlines. He wanted the truth. And he knew from experience, when someone plans revenge for 7 years, they don't stop at 2 bodies. He was careful, but he wasn't in hiding. After 7 years of being humiliated, falsely accused, abandoned and forgotten, Daniel had learned patience. He had moved away quietly, taken a new identity in Nevada for a few years, changed his appearance slightly, shaved his beard, lost weight, started working as an overnight trucker, never staying long in any city. No social media, no connections. But now in 2025, he had returned to Springdale, Missouri. Not as the man he once was, but as someone who had nothing left to lose. Detective Walker sat in his office early the next morning, sipping cold coffee and staring at the old court file. Divorce papers, child welfare reports, workplace complaints, anonymous tips, no evidence, just words, a web of lies and manipulation. Ruined by whispers, he muttered, and no one ever questioned it. Walker asked Officer Tara to look deeper, into Cynthia's financial records, into Amelia's school life, into the years following the divorce. And what they found painted a picture not many had seen. Cynthia had collected over $60,000 in alimony and had filed for several small business loans using Daniel's name and credit after the split. She had also helped her brother, currently in prison for fraud, open a fake auto repair shop in Daniel's name. Daniel had paid the price quietly. Amelia had told her teachers Daniel was abusive and creepy, but all her teachers marked her as happy and well-adjusted. One teacher even noted how Amelia once admitted to making things up to get attention at home. There were cracks in the story. Meanwhile, Daniel was living in a rented room behind a warehouse on the edge of town. He paid cash, no ID. He worked part-time unloading trucks under a different name, Dave Carter. He slept little, watched a lot. He had followed Cynthia and Amelia for months after returning to town. He watched Amelia smile and wave in public like she had never stabbed him in the back. He watched Cynthia throw garden parties in the very house she had taken from him. He took notes. He recorded voices. He knew when Ron Fields, Cynthia's new husband, would leave town for work. He knew Amelia's gym schedule and where she parked her car. And then, he waited for the right weekend. He didn't want revenge in a rush. He wanted justice in his own way. Final, undeniable, complete. But he had made one mistake. The gas station. The blurry plate had given him away. April 18th, 2025, 4:20 p.m. Detective Walker got the alert. A security camera at a truck depot just outside of town had matched Daniel's partial plate again. He and Officer Tara drove out with backup. The lot was quiet. Rows of trucks, stacked shipping containers, and a small, dusty office trailer. Walker knocked on the trailer door. No answer. Then a voice from behind. "Looking for someone?" It was Daniel. He stood tall, leaner than in his old pictures, wearing jeans and a dark jacket. His eyes were calm, but tired. Walker stared at him. "Daniel Harris?" Daniel nodded. "That's what they used to call me. We need to talk." Daniel raised his hand slowly. "I know." Walker noticed something in Daniel's eyes. Not fear, not even defiance, but a strange kind of peace. Back at the station, under calm lighting and a camera, Walker sat across from Daniel in the interrogation room. "Where were you the night of April 15th? Daniel looked straight ahead. "You already know." "Why now, Daniel?" Walker asked. "Why after all these years?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Because lies don't deserve to live forever." Walker paused, then leaned in. "I need the truth, Daniel. All of it." Daniel looked down, sighed, then looked back up. "Then you better get comfortable." Detective Raymond Walker sat in the quiet interrogation room. A digital recorder blinked steadily on the table. Across from him, Daniel Harris sat with his wrists cuffed, but his posture was relaxed. Not aggressive, not nervous, just tired. "You say lies don't deserve to live forever," Walker repeated slowly. "Tell me about the ones that destroyed you." Daniel leaned back in his seat, eyes focused on a spot on the wall. Then he began. "It started with whispers, small things. Amelia telling her mom I yelled at her, that I made her uncomfortable. At first, I didn't even know it was happening. Cynthia would get cold with me, distant. Then I found out she'd been seeing someone from her office long before the divorce." He paused, his jaw tight. "I tried to hold the family together. I bought her a new car. Took Amelia to her first job interview. I worked weekends. I missed my own son's birthdays just trying to provide for them." Walker nodded but said nothing. Daniel continued. "Then came the fake child services reports. I remember the first visit. The caseworker looked at me like I was already guilty. Amelia said I had anger issues, that I punched holes in the wall. I never did, not once. But Cynthia backed her story. I tried to explain, but no one believed me. I was a stepfather, an outsider." He looked directly at Walker now. "I lost my job a few months later. Someone emailed my boss, anonymous, said I was harassing my stepdaughter, a sick man. I was never charged, never even questioned by police, but I lost everything in a week." Walker flipped through the court documents again. The job termination, the divorce, the debt. Daniel wasn't lying. It all lined up. "They took my savings. My credit was ruined. My reputation? Gone. Cynthia got the house. The court gave her everything, and she wanted more. She opened fake credit accounts in my name. I tried to press charges. The police said it was a civil matter. Even her brother used my ID for a fake auto shop scam. I was blamed." Daniel's voice cracked slightly. "I wanted to die. I thought about it every day for years. But then I started thinking, if the system couldn't help me, maybe I had to help myself. I didn't want revenge right away. I wanted to see if they'd change, if they'd grow up, apologize. But instead, Amelia became a teacher. Cynthia opened a new insurance office. They smiled in photos like they had never destroyed a man." Walker took a breath. "So, you came back and killed them." Daniel didn't deny it. "I had nothing left. I watched them live while I survived. That garage, that's where Cynthia broke the last piece of me. That creek, that's where Amelia once told me she wished I'd disappear. So I did. And I waited." The room fell into silence. Walker finally asked, "You planned this for 7 years?" Daniel shook his head. "Number, I remembered it for 7 years. The plan only took a week." That night, Walker sat at his desk reviewing everything. Legally, the evidence against Daniel was growing strong. Surveillance, vehicle match, gas can purchase, motive. But emotionally, the case was unlike anything he had seen. Was Daniel a cold-blooded killer or a man who finally broke? Daniel Harris, former husband of deceased Cynthia Harris, has confessed to her murder and that of her daughter, Amelia Fields, née Harris. Motive linked to prolonged psychological abuse, false allegations, financial fraud, and a documented breakdown of personal and professional life following a contentious divorce. Suspect demonstrates clear awareness of actions, potential signs of long-term psychological trauma. Further psychiatric evaluation recommended before formal indictment. But Walker knew this case wasn't over yet, because one thing still didn't sit right. How had Daniel disappeared for 7 years without a trace? And who helped him? Detective Raymond Walker sat in the break room of the Springdale Police Department long after the others had gone home. The vending machine buzzed, and the clock on the wall ticked steadily, but Walker's thoughts were louder. Daniel Harris had confessed. The case should be closed, but it wasn't. Too many gaps, too many clean edges in a messy story. Daniel disappeared for 7 years. No bank records, no employment trail, no traffic tickets. And yet when he returned, he knew every step of Cynthia and Amelia's routines. Someone helped him vanish. Someone helped him return. And Walker was going to find out who. The next morning, Officer Tara handed Walker a file she'd compiled overnight. "I pulled everything I could find from Daniel's known contacts over the past 10 years. Friends, co-workers, former neighbors. One name kept coming up, Calvin Dunn." Walker flipped through the file. Calvin Dunn, 59, retired military mechanic, lived alone on the outskirts of Nevada, just west of Reno. No wife, no kids, no recent taxes filed. Suspicious. Daniel listed him once as an emergency contact during his old job. Tara added, "No one's heard from Calvin in 3 years. It's like he dropped off the grid." Walker placed a call to the Nevada State Police and requested a welfare check at Calvin's rural property. Hours later, they called back with what could only be described as a jackpot. Inside Calvin's garage was a makeshift living space, extra bed, kitchen supplies, and mail addressed to one David Carter. Walker knew that alias. Daniel had stayed with Calvin, maybe longer than they thought. Walker flew to Reno the next day and drove 2 hours through winding desert roads to a rusted trailer on the edge of a dry canyon. There, waiting on the porch with a mug of black coffee, was Calvin Dunn. Gray beard, hard eyes, and arms crossed like a man already bracing for a fight. "You the cop from Missouri?" "Detective Walker," he replied. "Mind if I ask you a few questions about Daniel Harris?" Calvin didn't answer right away. He took a long sip, then nodded toward a metal chair. "He stayed here, off and on, worked on trucks with me. Didn't talk much, didn't need to." "You helped him disappear?" "No," Calvin said calmly. "The world made him disappear. I just gave him a place to breathe." Walker looked him over. "He told you what they did to him?" "He didn't have to. I saw it in his face. Same look I saw in Men After War. The dead kind of eyes." Walker's voice softened. "You knew what he was planning when he left, didn't you?" Calvin stared at the canyon. "I figured something was coming. Didn't ask. But I told him, revenge doesn't fix anything. And he said, that justice doesn't live in the courts anymore." Back in Springdale, Walker now had enough to charge Calvin with aiding a fugitive. But he hesitated. Calvin hadn't lied. He hadn't hidden a murderer. He had taken in a broken man, ignored by a system that should have protected him. Demonstrates protective instincts, possible shared distrust of legal systems, ex-military trauma indicator. That night, Walker stared at his whiteboard filled with photos. Cynthia's garage, Amelia's tarp, the gas station video, Calvin's trailer. The red thread ran across years, states, and broken trust. But still, something pulled at him. Daniel had confessed, but he confessed too easily. And as Walker reviewed the evidence again, he noticed something chilling. Amelia's wounds were inconsistent with Daniel's strength profile. She had defensive wounds on both arms, and her stab wounds showed erratic force. The angle of the cuts suggested someone shorter. Someone panicked. Someone else was there. Someone who might have wanted Amelia dead for their own reasons. Daniel might not have acted alone after all. Detective Raymond Walker knew something wasn't right. Daniel Harris had confessed to both murders, Cynthia and Amelia. But the details of Amelia's wounds whispered a different truth. She had fought hard, too hard. The wounds were jagged, panicked, and inconsistent with Daniel's calm, deliberate nature. He strangled Cynthia, clean, efficient, calculated. But Amelia, that wasn't the same killer. Walker met with Dr. Lydia Cho, the county forensic pathologist. "You're certain about the height difference?" Walker asked. Dr. Cho nodded, pointing to the 3D wound reconstruction on her screen. These stab wounds came from someone shorter than Amelia. Not by much, but noticeable. The angle suggests the attacker was about 5'7", maybe 5'8", and slashed upward. Daniel Harris is 6'1". Walker rubbed his forehead. "What about the defensive wounds?" "She fought back, fiercely, but there's no bruising on her knuckles or fractures in her wrists. Whoever stabbed her, they weren't stronger than her. Amelia was overwhelmed, not overpowered." That was the break Walker needed. Back at the station, Walker re-reviewed interviews, phone records, and location data. One name returned to his list: Jason Miles, Amelia's fiancé. Jason had been cooperative, grieving, helpful. But something about his face during questioning had felt too smooth. No hesitation, no emotion, no grief-driven outbursts. Walker decided it was time to take another look. Deeper. Walker pulled Amelia's phone records from the week before her death. One conversation stood out: a 22-minute call with an unknown number, a prepaid burner phone, just 2 days before she died. Jason opened the door with red eyes and messy hair. "Detective, something new?" Walker studied him. "Mind if I come in?" Jason hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside was a tidy living room. A photo of Jason and Amelia on the mantel. Smiles, matching shirts, the perfect couple. "You said Amelia never mentioned being afraid?" Walker asked. "Of anyone?" Number not at all. "And you were home alone the night Cynthia was murdered?" Jason blinked. "Yes, why?" Walker stepped closer. "Because I have security footage placing a car matching your make and model outside Amelia's apartment that same night. And we just found out that the killer who stabbed Amelia was someone her size, not Daniel." Jason's face paled. "You think I—" No, I didn't kill her. I loved her." "Did she love you?" Silence. Jason's hands began to shake. "We had problems, okay? She found out something. She said she wanted to postpone the wedding." Walker narrowed his eyes. "What did she find out, Jason?" Jason exhaled hard. Tears welled up, but there was rage underneath. "She read my messages. I've been talking to someone else. An example. She flipped out. Said she didn't want to marry a liar like her mother did. We fought, but I didn't kill her." "Where were you the night she died?" Jason was cornered now, breathing hard, eyes darting. "I went to her place to talk. She was furious. Told me she knew about what her mother did to Daniel, that she felt guilty, wanted to go public, that she knew people would hate her. I told her to stop. She screamed at me, said maybe she should have let Daniel kill himself when she had the chance." Walker's eyes narrowed. "What happened next?" Jason slumped. "She hit me first. I grabbed the knife from her counter. I didn't mean to do it. I panicked. I stabbed. I kept stabbing. I blacked out. When I came to, she was gone. I wrapped her in the tarp and dumped her by the creek. I thought Daniel would take the blame." Jason Miles was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and obstruction of justice. His prints matched the knife handle found near the creek, hidden under a pile of rocks. Daniel's confession to Amelia's murder was now void. Hold Daniel Harris on original arson and first-degree murder charges for Cynthia Harris. Release on second count pending further psychiatric evaluation. Walker leaned back in his chair, exhausted but relieved. Two killers, two different motives, but the same household, the same toxic legacy. One acted out of years of pain, the other out of fear, guilt, and impulse. But the truth had finally spoken. Almost. Because there was one final question still haunting Walker. Did Daniel really intend to kill Amelia at all? Springdale was quiet again. The town, once shaken by the double murders, had begun to settle. News crews packed up, neighbors swept their porches, people whispered less. But inside the police station, Detective Raymond Walker still had unfinished business. 2 people were dead. 2 suspects had confessed. But something still didn't fit. Daniel Harris was behind bars, awaiting trial for Cynthia's murder and arson. Jason Miles, Amelia's fiancé, had confessed to Amelia's murder, and all forensic evidence backed it. But when Walker looked at Daniel's eyes during their last interview, he saw something strange. Guilt, but not over Amelia. Walker sat across from Daniel one last time. Jason confessed to killing Amelia, he said. Said he acted alone. Daniel didn't react. He just nodded. Walker pressed forward. That means you didn't kill her. You knew she was dead, but you didn't say a word. Daniel looked up, eyes tired but sharp. Why would I? Because you confessed to both murders, even the one you didn't commit. Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile. I wasn't lying, detective. I just didn't correct your version of the truth. Daniel had been watching from his truck, parked across from Amelia's apartment. He saw Jason arrive, saw them argue through the window, saw Jason leave in a panic 2 hours later. The next morning, Amelia was gone. Daniel followed the news. When the town began whispering that he had returned, he understood what happened. Jason killed Amelia, but everyone would assume he did it. Daniel realized this was the perfect storm. He didn't need to touch her. He only needed to let the world believe he had. So you took the fall to finish your story. Daniel looked him dead in the eyes. Cynthia destroyed my name. Jason destroyed Amelia. But the world wouldn't believe either of them were monsters unless I was painted as the devil first. So I gave them a devil. Walker sat in the stunned silence. You were going to kill Cynthia either way. Yes, but Amelia? Daniel shook his head slowly. I wanted her to live. I wanted her to see what guilt felt like. But Jason took that from me. Walker stared long at the man before him. Broken, brilliant, vengeful, calm. You're not insane, Daniel, but you are dangerous. Daniel looked away. Only when silence is louder than justice. The Harris double murder case has concluded. Cynthia Harris was murdered by Daniel Harris in a premeditated act driven by prolonged psychological trauma, financial abuse, and public ruin. Daniel's confession is consistent, and all evidence aligns with his account. Amelia Harris was murdered by her fiancé, Jason Miles, during an emotional confrontation. Jason's confession, phone records, and forensic evidence confirm his sole involvement. It is further concluded that Daniel Harris did not participate in Amelia's murder, though he willingly allowed suspicion to fall on him in order to mask Jason's guilt, demonstrating a deep psychological strategy rooted in symbolic justice rather than direct vengeance. Daniel Harris to undergo full psychological evaluation before sentencing. Suggest long-term supervised confinement with psychiatric care. Justice was never about the verdict for Daniel. It was about being seen, about making the world finally listen to the man it once erased. I don't condone what he did, but for the first time, I understand it. Springdale moved on, but Raymond Walker never forgot the face of a man who lived in silence for 7 years and finally made the world hear his scream.